Hi everyone, it's Olivia from Girlybunches, and in this week's video I'm going to be quickly showing you how I join squares together, or you could be using hexagons. It's the same principles apply, but I've had a few requests on people would like to see just a quick video on how I join crochet items together. So I'm going to be using a crochet hook and a darning needle. So these are the two different ways that you can join squares or the hexagons that I've shown you how to make together to make sort of blankets or items, small cushion covers or whatever. So I'm using this sort of darning needle here. I like using darning needles. I think these might be actually called tapestry needles, but you want a needle that's got a nice wide eye to it so that you can get your yarn through, and you don't want anything that's too pointy, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to split the yarn as you're working through, because when we're using a needle, you basically want to be able to get your needle through. I'll let my camera focus where you would put the hook, so that would be through those two loops there. What you don't want to do is split where you're putting it through and split that yarn, because that won't be a true stitch, then you'll only be half stitching it together. So if it's easier for you, you might want to use something that's slightly bigger. This is a bigger needle again, and probably more the sort of in keeping with the size of hook that you might be using. So you can see that's much easier to put through. So it depends on what you find more comfortable to use. There are plastic needles which do the same thing, but I think metal needles do slide a bit easier through your work. But you definitely want something that isn't pointy. You want something that's got a nice round head to it so that it doesn't split the yarn, because that's the last thing you want to do. Okay, so that's just a tip for what type of needle to use. And the hook that you use should be the same as the hook that you've used for your project, because you will be putting the hook, like I said, with the needle through the loops that you have at the top of your stitch, like you would be to repeat your stitches for the rest of the pattern. So you don't want anything that's too big, otherwise it will warp your final edge, and likewise you don't want anything that's smaller, because that will again warp your edge, but in the other direction it will pull it in as opposed to stretching it out. So I hope that makes sense, and I'll get on and show you how I would join these together. Okay, so I'm going to show you using the needle method first. I'm going to use this large one so that you can see what I'm doing, and I've just got some yarn here. I'm using a different colour so that you can see where I'm putting the stitches. And the reason that you have a nice thick eye here is so that you can thread your yarn through nice and easily. That goes through nice and easily because that is a nice wide open eye there. If you're using really chunky yarn, here's a tip for how I thread a needle, and probably most of you already know this already, but if you just wrap your yarn around the eye of your needle like so, then pinch it in your fingers like that, and then you just push that up through the eye, and then it goes in nice and easy. This was easy anyway because this is a very wide eye on this one. Okay, so we're going to take our two items that we want to sew together, and we're going to put them back side to back side, so that's the wrong side together, and we'll have the front sides and the right sides facing outwards. So just line them up together, and if we look at our work, what we've got here is we've got the two loops that we would normally work into, but what we want to do is we want to work into the back loops only. So that's the back loop and that's the front loop, and together if you put the hook through you'd have two loops on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the needle through the back loop of both of those stitches. So there's the back loop of that treble and the back loop, if I can find it, there it is, the back loop of that treble there. Okay, so again, making sure we're not splitting the yarn, we're using those loops. We're going to put the needle through and pull the yarn through. And then we're going to do the same. We're going to work into the back loop of the next stitch along on both sides, and we're just going to work our stitches along Now my camera's not going to focus, thank you. And then we're going to just keep going. Obviously you would probably use a coloured yarn that is the same as your project. I'm just using one that is different so you can see where I'm placing the stitches. And you would do that all the way along. And my neighbours are now banging on the walls, so sorry if you can hear them. Oh, I can't wait to move somewhere else. And I've just unthreaded my needle. There we go. All happens at once, doesn't it? There you go. Okay, so I'm going to work my way along and come back when I get to the end. Okay, so I've got to the end there now, and once you fold out your work, you can see that that makes a nice flat edge. If I just zoom in on that, you can see how nice and flat that lies, and the stitches obviously are quite visible because I'm using a darker shade of yarn, but they would blend in very nicely if you're using the same colour. So that's that's a very sort of standard way of sewing together things. Notice I didn't pull anything very tight. It was all very loose. Like I've not pulled anything tight like that. Everything was kept nice and loose. And as you can see, it makes a nice join. And on the other side, it's the same. Okay, so that's just working through the back loops of each excuse me, of each stitch that you have on the edge. So that's one method, and I really like that method, and sometimes it is nice to use a different colour yarn as a detail. You know, it's up to you. Your blanket or whatever you're making, it's entirely up to you. It's quite nice to have the contrast, but if you want those stitches to be hidden, then use the same colour yarn. Okay, so I'm going to set up again and show you with the crochet hook. Right, so this time I'm using a crochet hook to join these two together. So again, we're going to have wrong side to wrong side together, and the right side's facing out. And this time, instead of just going through the back loops, we're going to go through both of the loops that we would normally work into, apart from when we're working in a gap where we're just going to put the hook through the gap and work the stitch that way. Okay, so I'm going to start here again like I did with the first treble here. Again, I know that as a treble, you may know that as a double, and I'm going to put the hook through the two loops again on the other side with the corresponding treble on the back. Okay, so to get started, all I'm going to do is just do a simple slip stitch, get that out of the way, which is just put the hook through, pull the yarn through and through the loop that you already have on your hook, like so, and that's just to get us started. So I'm going to do one chain, and that will replace the first double. I know those as doubles, you may know those as singles. That's because I use British terminology. Okay, so the next stitch is to put through the hook of both of the next two trebles, so from both sides. So we've now got the hook through the top of that treble and the top of that treble there, and I'm just going to do a double like so, and that's all I'm going to do through the tops of those two stitches that correspond with each other on either side, and just work my way along. So again, with the, like I said, with those gaps there, I'm just going to do the double through that stitch there, and then just work again into the stitches along, putting them through the top loops of the stitches and doing my double and just working my way along. Take it nice and slowly if you're not comfortable with doing this, and it won't be long before you are, and when you finish making your first blanket you'll be very used to doing it. So it's just about making sure you put the hook in the right place to the corresponding edge, the stitches, sorry, and just working your way nice and slowly. Again, don't put too much pressure on, don't pull the yarn tight. It's going to seal it up once you've made those stitches and be very strong and firm. So I'm just going to finish there, and once you lay this out, you do need to do a little bit of tweaking by pushing the stitches upright. And if I just zoom in on this one, okay, you can see now that we've got this nice raised edged join. It's part of the, you know, some people don't like that raised part, but I do quite like it. It's part of the stitch that you're, you know, the overall look. It's if I just hold it up, you can see how much raised it is. It's not terribly raised, it's just you are creating a stitch on the edge, so it will be raised up, but you know, that's a look that you get with some blankets, and I happen to really like it, so it's entirely up to you. So I can get my camera to focus, sorry. So again, I'm using a contrasting yarn, which in this instance I actually think is a nice feature by having a different colour yarn. So you could do the whole blanket if this was a blanket. I'm just going to zoom out again. You could do the whole blanket in one colour and just have a accent colour to do the trim, the joining and the outer edge. You know, that's just one of the many sort of different styles that you can do, which is very simple to do but actually very effective and looks really gorgeous. Okay, so those are my two different ways of quickly showing you how to join squares. This could obviously, again, like I said, could be for hexagons like I've shown you how to make. I've put links down below to those videos. I really hope you found this quick video helpful. I'd love a thumbs up if you did, and if you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button up there. I would really love it if you did, and you can keep up to date with my videos that come out once a week. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the description box down below, or if you have any suggestions for more videos, I'd love to hear them, or any just questions that you have, I'll try and answer them. I always do try and answer them. Might not be straight away, but I always do eventually get around to answering your questions. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!